Okay, let's go over how to do some speed sculpting in Sculptris. Now, I'm actually really falling in love with Sculptris right now. It does a great job of getting some really fast starts on any kind of sculpting you want to do. I actually prefer it over Dynamesh and ZBrush. I prefer it over concept sculpting in Mudbox. It's really great, so I'm going to show you how to take advantage of it. The first thing I want to do before I get into any sculpting on anything is to bring in a reference image. So let's go over to Photoshop really quick and look at what we have here. So I got some concept art by Vinicius Menezes. He's a Brazilian artist. He's really amazing. I love his work. So I just brought in an image of his into Photoshop, and I made a document that is the same size and resolution of my main monitor. So my monitor is HD 1080, 1920 by 1080, and then I just brought in the concept art right here and saved it out as a JPEG. So we're just going to load this JPEG up inside of Sculptris, and you want it to be the same size as your window so that it doesn't stretch or anything. Alright, so back in Sculptris, we're going to go and click on Options and click Background. And now I just want to go to where I saved that, Image Plane BG. Alright, great. So now you see that we've got that image plane in the background. Now we can just hit OK. And so now you can see we can move around this sphere and our image plane is right there in the background. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is start sculpting this sphere so that it gets the basic proportions of our concept art. So Sculptris is very similar in navigation to ZBrush. If you want to rotate around, you just click and drag in open area. If you hold down Alt and click and drag, it'll move the model around. And if you let go of Alt while you're doing that, it'll zoom in and out. If you hold down Shift while you're rotating, it'll snap to an orthographic view. So snaps to bottom, top, front, whatever. Okay, so we've got it snapped to the side. One of the main brushes I like to start out with is the grab brush. So you can see here we've got a little circle around the area of influence. And we can make the brush bigger or smaller by holding down the spacebar, and we get this little size, strength, detail thing. First off, to change the size, you don't even have to click and drag on this thing right here. Just hit spacebar, and wherever you just start clicking and dragging up and down is going to change the size. If you click and drag left and right, it's going to change the strength. So that's really handy. Okay, so I want my size to be a little bit bigger, and actually I'm just going to zoom out and move this model so it's more on top of our concept art right here. Okay, so I've got the grab tool selected, and I'm just going to click and grab and basically just pull out the basic proportions of our creature here. I'm just going to shrink the brush a little bit and pull out that tail. Just want to make sure it's snapped into the orthographic side view. And then from here I'm just going to get this a little bit closer to our reference. Alright, pretty cool. I'm just going to go to the front view now and just slide this over. And let's pull out these legs a little bit here. It's a little bit like a manatee right now. So looks like the leg got pulled a little bit from the wrong place. I'm just going to kind of scoot this back here. But the really great thing about Sculptris is you really don't have to think or worry about your topology. It automatically creates new topology for you. So you can just kind of pull stuff wherever you want it to be. And as you're rotating around and moving stuff, the size of your model is going to shift a little bit. So you don't want to use this to, if you need really precise image planes, like if you need it to line up really precisely with your image planes. This is more to get it just kind of generally in the right place. Okay, so we've got our basic limbs created, and I'm just going to go in with grab here and just tweak things around a little bit so I get it looking a bit nicer. It's just kind of messy right now. If you want to smooth, just hold down the Shift button and you go into smooth mode, just like in ZBrush or Mudbox. Now I'm just going to kind of eyeball it because if I have the model sitting on top of my reference, I won't really be able to see the reference. But since I know that my proportions are pretty close, I can probably eyeball it. So one thing that you might notice is sometimes your mesh will get a little bit pinched in a place you don't want it. By the way, I just hit W to turn on wireframe. So one thing you can do is, if maybe it's pinched there and it's not really smoothing out the way you'd like it to, one thing you can do is go into reduce mode. So with this brush, it actually just gets rid of excess polygons. So there's more polygons than I really need in a particular area. You just brush and they go away, and so now you smooth on that area and it smooths away a lot more cleanly. Alright, W to go back out of wireframe mode. And another brush I like to use a lot is draw. The shortcut for that is D. And so now with this, you can just go in and draw on more musculature, if you want more of that. Kind of draw in more of a leg here. Oh, and you see one thing that actually happened here is when I pulled down that leg, it kind of pulled down too much, like in the middle. So that's not too hard to deal with, actually. Just kind of go in there and sculpt out that negative space between the legs. And Sculptris actually deals with this pretty well. It might get a little bit messy in there, but it's a speed sculpt. It doesn't have to be perfectly clean or anything. Maybe a little too much there. So let's see, I want to give some more thickness to those hind legs here, so I'm just going to take the grab tool and just kind of pull out some thickness to that paw. Probably the front paw needs that too. You can just be really quick here. Don't worry about making any mistakes, because, if you do something wrong, you just smooth it right out again. It's no big deal. So I'm just comparing with my reference, back and forth, just trying to get it right. See, I want to give him a little bit more of a knee here. Let's see, I'm going to use the grab tool to kind of separate this a little bit. Kind of pull that apart. And it's going to get a little bit messy. Actually, I'm going to go in with the reduce brush and just kind of try to clean up some of this unnecessary density. Alright, cool. Just kind of fill in that hole again. It's just kind of a back and forth process, just whatever needs work, you just go ahead and start sculpting on it. There's really no big mystery, it all kind of works in Sculptris. Let's see, it looks like I need to get the angle of this Achilles tendon a little bit more accurate here. It's got kind of a knee. Alright, so that's kind of looking roughly close. Another brush I love to use all the time is the crease brush. It's E on the keyboard to get into crease brush mode, and then the way this works is you just draw where you want kind of a separation between forms, and it just does a really nice job of it. So I'm going to isolate this leg a little bit. Let's isolate the shoulder a little bit. And just like in Maya or in ZBrush, if you want to do the opposite of any brush, you just hold down Alt. So by default the crease brush creases inwards. I'm just going to undo that, Control Z. If you want to crease outwards, just hold down Alt and you get kind of an outwards ridge. All the brushes, most of the brushes will work that way. Okay, so I could put, some more time into getting the exact anatomy that I want in the legs here, but let's move on to try out some other things here. So let's make some of the face. I'm just going to go into, let's try some of the other brushes here. Let's use Inflate. It works kind of like the Draw. It's just a little bit different, kind of bulges a little bit more, get a little bit more of an intense effect. But, this can come in really handy if you want to make some of that anatomy in the face. Just kind of draw it on. It just works. There's not really any mystery to it. You just sculpt and you get what you want. You don't even have to think about it so much. This might actually be a good place to use the crease brush to get some harder edges here. So I'm going to hold down Alt and just kind of draw on here, and I want to get a little bit sharper definition like in that jawline. Or, also define the gums and the teeth. Just want to tweak this after I make it. And let's pull out some ears. So I'm just going to go into G, grab mode. And actually one thing I want to talk about really quick is there's kind of like some different settings up here, so you can change the strength or the size. Faster way to do it is usually just holding down the space bar. There's another setting right here, is detail. So this determines how much detail is created. So if we set this down to 0, I'm going to go into wireframe mode, and now we've got the grab tool. So I want to make some ears. If I set this to 0 and I pull out some ears, you notice it's not actually creating more detail in here. It's just stretching out what I already have. And so this is basically like working in ZBrush. If you're going to use the Move tool and pull out something, you're going to get all this stretching. However, if you tell it to give it some detail, then this is at the maximum. I usually find just leaving it right in the middle works great. But now if we want to pull out some ears, notice it's creating new edges as it pulls it out. So that's really great. That's what I want. So let's pull out an ear. And then wireframe off, W. And so another setting here is global, and you'll find this in all the move, scale, and rotate tools. Global is going to move the entire model, and if I turn off global, then it's just going to move in the area of the size of the brush. Some of the other brushes like Draw, there's like a clay mode, which is a little bit softer, and even, I don't even really notice the difference between having soft on and off, but clay, it'll just kind of build up a little bit more slowly if it's on clay mode, and if you turn that off, it'll build up more dramatically. Some of the other brushes have settings, flatten, there's some things to play with. I usually just leave it the way it is by default. So, if you're in grab mode and you're moving the whole thing and you don't understand what's going on, just hit undo, hit G again, and it turns that global mode on and off. So I'm just going to play with the shape of the ears a little bit. I'll work in some more of the anatomy of the face. I'm just working really quick right now. You don't want to get bogged down into too much details until you've got all the basic structures established. I'll use the crease brush here and establish that nose a little bit more clearly. Give him an eyeball. Give him some bags under the eyes or some eyelids. Maybe you can give him some teeth. Then you could use the crease brush to tighten up, sharpen up the definition between the teeth. Okay, so I could spend all day on this, and I usually do. But let's get into some of the other features of Sculptris here before we get too far ahead of ourselves. One thing you might use sometimes is masking. So that works almost just like in ZBrush. You just hold down Control and you can draw a mask anywhere you want. And so let's use this to make his collar. Just like in ZBrush, if you just hold down Control and click in an open space, it'll invert the mask. So now what I can do is go to Inflate and just get a really big brush here. Just tap it a few times on here and it's just going to expand out from that selection and give us a nice collar. And then Control A gets rid of all of that. And now so you get kind of a ragged edge sometimes when doing that, and that's really not any problem. So I just go into the crease brush here and just kind of brush and tighten up. You can go into smooth a little bit, just kind of work it back and forth, smooth it, sharpen it with crease, smooth it some more until you get something that's as nice as you need it to be. And for a speed sculpt, it doesn't usually have to be terribly precise. It's just it's about concepting. It's about getting your ideas out in visual form, and then you can be more precise with it later. When you actually get into retopology and modeling it, then that's the time to worry about precision. But at this point, it's more about getting your ideas out. Let's see, we could do the spikes on the back similar way. Let's just see what happens if I use grab here. So you could pull out spikes this way. That can work, no problem at all. Okay, cool. Let's see. Some more things you might want to use. There's flatten. And what this is basically going to do is it's going to take the parts that are high and push them down, and the parts that are low and push them up. So, that might not be what I want to do there, but it's actually really cool because one way it works is if you hold down Alt, you get the opposite effect, and it's actually going to exaggerate everything. So what's high is going to get even higher, and what's low is going to get even lower. So that can come in handy sometimes. If you've sculpted some detail and you realize you want it to be more intense, just go into flatten, go, hold down Alt, make it reverse, and you get to exaggerate that detail. Something else you might want to consider is symmetry. So if you turn off symmetry, you'll notice that center line is gone now. So if you want to make any asymmetrical sculpts, at this point, you can definitely do that. Like he's got this scar on his shoulder, so you could go in and define that with a mask. Oops. I'm just holding down Alt so that I get kind of the opposite of masking and sort of an unmask, an erase mask. Right? Invert the selection, and then just gonna brush it inwards a little bit. Get a scar like that, so it's asymmetrical. Now, the one issue with symmetry in Sculptris is that if you go back to symmetry mode, what it does is it flips the left side over to the right side. So, unless you want all of your asymmetrical details to get copied over to the other side, you don't want to go back to symmetry. You want to make sure you've got all of your symmetrical work done first before you go into symmetry mode. One interesting thing, though, that you can do with symmetry mode off is rotate it around. So if you turn on global rotate, you can rotate the entire model relative to the screen. So from the top view now you can rotate the whole thing any which way, which you couldn't do when symmetry is on. So if you go to rotate with symmetry on, actually really crazy things happen, so I don't recommend doing that. So there's some other things you can do. You can load in stencils, images to project onto the model. You can paint textures. There's a lot of other things you can do, but this is basically what you need to get started with Sculptris and start sculpting. So I would definitely spend more time on sculpting out all the anatomy on this, but it's all the same tools I've shown you already. It's just a matter of jumping in and making it happen. So I hope this helps you out, and have good times with Sculptris.